So today I want to go over 5 different mistakes you don't want to make when starting out in Diablo 4. And you're going to want to stick around until the end because number 1 is very important. And at number 5, you're not going to want to ignore elixirs because these are just going to give you free experience. And these are going to be 30-minute buff potions that give you some type of combat buff and an increase to your experience by 5%, but they only last 30 minutes. And all you're going to need to do to craft these is you gather some resources, get a little bit of gold, you go to an alchemist in any of the settlements, and you can craft a ton of different options of all these different elixirs, but all of them are still going to give you that 5% XP buff. No matter if it's the cheapest elixir or the most expensive elixir, they're all going to give this 5% experience. And then you'll also be able to get combat buffs like lucky hit chance increase or dodge increase. But when you're first starting out the game and you don't have a ton of resources, you're just going to want to make the cheapest elixirs and always make sure to have a stockpile of them on you, and you're going to want to pop a new one every 30 minutes. And you might even want to have a timer for 30 minutes because having one of these popped at all times is just going to give you free experience, and some of the low ranked elixirs are incredibly cheap. And at number 4, you're not going to want to skip the main campaign. And that might sound pretty obvious, but there's a lot of people that would rather just go off and explore the map and do whatever they want to do instead of following the main campaign of the game. But there are a few reasons why following the main campaign is going to be incredibly important for your overall progression. And the first part being very important for people that like to make a lot of alts and try out all the classes. Because once you complete the main campaign on any character, you will now unlock a campaign skip for every other character, no matter what game mode it's in or what realm it's on. So if you complete the main campaign on an Eternal Realm softcore character, that will give you the skip campaign on any characters like that, on any hardcore characters, or on any seasonal characters. So if you're someone that wants to play alt, or if you're somebody that's going to want to play the new seasons or try out hardcore characters, you want to complete the campaign because then you can just skip the campaign on new characters and level up in any way you want. And most likely there's going to be ways to level up more quickly, not following the main campaign. So you want to get that done on your first character. And the second part is you're going to have to complete the main campaign to unlock the majority of the endgame content. And this is done by getting into World Tier 3. And to get into World Tier 3, one of the main objectives is to complete the main campaign of the game. And getting into World Tier 3 basically turns on the end game. You'll be able to start getting sacred items, unique items. You'll start to be able to get nightmare sigils to do nightmare dungeons. You'll unlock the ability to see hell tides, and you'll start to be able to fight champion monsters. And that's on top of just increasing the amount of loot you're going to get, the amount of experience you're going to get, and the amount of gold you're going to be getting. So completing the main campaign is going to be one of the most important things you can do when starting off in Diablo 4. And number 3 is somewhat of a continuation of number 4 in that you're going to want to focus on unlocking World Tier 3 while you're leveling up and getting to the point where you can actually enter World Tier 3. And the first part of that is obviously completing the campaign that we just went over. And the second part of unlocking World Tier 3 is to complete the first capstone dungeon called the Cathedral of Light. And capstone dungeons are very difficult dungeons that you have to go complete to unlock the next world tier, but these dungeons do not scale with you. And the Cathedral of Light is going to be a level 50 dungeon. So if you go complete the main campaign and you're level 40, the capstone dungeon is not going to scale with you. It's going to be level 50, so you might not be able to complete it at that low level. So just leveling up efficiently while you follow the main campaign with things like the experience elixir is going to help you substantially in getting into World Tier 3 and getting into World Tier 3 very quickly. Because like we went over, you can't even start to obtain unique items until you've entered World Tier 3. And another one of the big things you can do to start preparing yourself as you're leveling up is to start to complete the dungeons in the open world that give you legendary aspects in your Codex of Power that's going to be good for your build. Because you're going to need a pretty decent build to complete that first capstone dungeon. So as you're leveling up, doing dungeons, completing the main campaign missions, you're going to want to try to focus on continuously increasing the strength of your build. And one of the best ways to do this is to go complete dungeons, get new Codex codexes in the Codex of Power, so you can have a lot of the legendary powers you're going to want once you get up to the point of entering and completing the Capstone Dungeon. And having a laid out build by the time you get to the Capstone Dungeon is also going to be very important to completing that dungeon, getting into World Tier 3, and starting the vast majority of the endgame. And at number 2, we have one of the most important rules to follow when leveling up in Diablo 4, and that's not to waste gold. Gold is going to be incredibly important in Diablo 4 and is going to be used in basically everything. And once you get more into the end game where you're going to need to start to put together your build and upgrade your gear, you're going to want to have a stockpile of gold. If you don't, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to farm up that gold to get your build put together to start to go into the higher difficulties. And there's a couple ways you can make sure not to waste gold. First off, don't upgrade your gear while leveling up. You can go to a jeweler or a blacksmith and level up all of your different pieces of gear depending on their rarity. This is going to take a bunch of resources and a ton of gold. Pretty much don't do this at all until you've completed the main campaign and you're trying to make your build strong enough to get into World Tier 3. There's really no reason to do this before that point. And another pretty big trick you can do is to not imprint legendary powers onto the main weapon you're going to be using. Now, the reason for this is because pretty much all the damage of Diablo 4 on all of your skills, on all of your effects, is going to be scaled off of your weapon damage, meaning you're always going to want to be equipping new, higher eye level weapons you get because they're always going to have more base damage. Even if their affixes aren't good for you or are really terrible for you, you're always going to want to be using that highest eye level weapon just because of the base damage increases. Now, this means if you keep imprinting legendary powers onto that weapon every time you get a new one, you're just going to be spending massive amounts of gold for basically no reason. Now, a better thing you can do is if you get one of the best legendary powers for your build is to put that on your amulet. Your amulet, you're going to be able to keep a lot longer than you're going to be able to keep a main weapon, and it's still going to boost that legendary power's effects by 50%. It's not going to double that legendary effect like it can on, say, a two-handed weapon, but you're not going to be spending a ton of gold constantly re-imprinting legendary powers onto your weapon. You're just going to be switching out in a level or two. And this is going to be for your main weapon that you're always using. If you're a melee build as a rogue, you don't have to worry about switching out your bow all the time because that's not where a lot of your damage is going to be scaled from. And if you're on a barbarian and your main damaging attack is set to one of your two-handers, that's the only weapon you're going to want to be switching out consistently because that's where the most of your damage is going to be scaled from. And following those two tips is going to allow you to stockpile a lot of gold for once you get into the end game, because having more gold is just going to be able to make your build much stronger when trying to get into higher world tiers and get into the end game farming. And then finally, for number 1, we have the most important rule, which is to have fun. And what I'm primarily meaning by this is you don't have to do everything completely optimally when Diablo 4 is released, because I know there's going to be a lot of people that skip all the cinematics, that skip all the dialogue just to rush to level 50, rush into the end game, and to try to do everything fully optimally and not caring as much about enjoying the main campaign. Personally, I'm going to be watching every cinematic, I'm going to be following all the dialogue and all the text of the main campaign, and I'm not going to be using any of the data mine maps, at least for my first playthrough. And while doing this list, I want to give information that wasn't super intrusive, so it's going to change up your gameplay, but to give you some easy ways to be more efficient with leveling up and progressing while not forcing any ridiculous gameplay changes for the sake of efficiency. And I think focusing on full efficiency over having fun, especially on your first playthrough, is the biggest mistake I think a lot of people are going to be making. You're only going to be able to see these cinematics once, you're only going to be able to meet all these characters once, and you're only going to be able to experience the entirety of the world of Diablo 4 and the stories of Diablo 4 one time. After that, you're already going to know the stories, you're already going to know all the information. So that first playthrough, I would recommend going through it at your own pace and trying to experience everything while using some of these easy tips to be more efficient while doing that. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.